Welcome to Topline Hotline.
Hello, everybody. This is the least interesting Topline Hotline introduction you'll ever hear because I'm a little bit gloomy today. It's Thursday. It's Topline Hotline. You know Topline Hotline. It's that short informational segment from the creators of Topline to answer your burning questions about go-to-market. I'm joined by my hosts, Asad Zaman, CEO of Sales Talent Agency, AJ Bruno, CEO of QuotaPath. I am Sam Jacobs, CEO of Pavilion, and we're off to help give you some answers on your go-to-market challenges. Awesome.
You know why I love you, Sam? You're still in the field. You're feeling gloomy, but you're here. You're doing the work. You're in the field.
Okay. Show it up.
Let's do this. Okay, so we have a question again from the Pavilion Slack, and it's from a new member. So, hello, revenue leaders. I have recently joined Pavilion. Welcome. And I am knee-deep in CRO school. Good move. I've also joined many roundtables and webinars. This person is doing it right. A consistent theme I'm hearing is that product and marketing generates demand and sales turns demand into money. I agree with this generally, but clearly an outbound strategy also needs to be part of demand gen. So my question is, in a traditional SaaS business, what % of demand should typically be driven by sales directly, AEs and SDRs combined? AJ.
Me? This is such a loaded question. There's so many dependencies, so I'm going to give a very broad answer, and then Sam can disagree with me, which will be perfect. I would say in today's world, in today's market, if you're working, let's say, a mid-market type of organization, so just like right down the fairway, you're probably looking at 30 to 40% outbound and 60 to 70% inbound.
That's right.
Am I way off on this? I might be way off. I'm talking like the challenge I have with this question is that my first business was all outbound, super outbound generated, very outbound. Then we added marketing. QuotaPath has had the opposite issue.
Interesting.
Well, but for the data that we've discussed, which is that outbound is 4 times harder now.
Yeah, exactly. So like I'm trying to think about like what's going to create an efficient process in today, and you're going to have to crack the code because you have to have a strong brand positioning and just a general. You have to have brand and you have to have product marketing before you have demand gen. And so like you have to nail those things and have a strong point of view on the market to create a unique differentiation. That unique differentiation creates word of mouth. That word of mouth is going to be your best demand gen channel that you could ever possibly hope for. And I know Sam will probably agree with that. I mean, like I'm an ambassador for Topline for Pavilion. And like, I know that he can rely on me or other ambassadors to talk very positively around Pavilion. And that will do much more than any ad that he puts out there.
Tom, what do you think?
The main thing I disagree with what you said, Asad, is that SDRs should be counted as demand gen. That's what they are. So
that was this person's question. Why are you hating on me?
Hey, Asad, why would you say something so stupid?
Yeah, Asad, what is your effing problem? What's your problem? Like, why?
I feel
why are you breathing my oxygen? It's just going to unproductive uses.
I really like that term. Why are you breathing my oxygen? I'm going to use that.
Over in Toronto. I tend to agree with AJ. I think generally speaking, AEs should prospect 20% of their own pipe because they need to keep their skills sharp. I think the other 80%, 40% should be outbound, and 40% should be kind of like human assisted inbound. So inbound versus outbound. So 40% should be SDRs. And maybe those numbers slightly shift because outbound's less effective, and maybe you don't have very good SDRs, or you only have a few that are like, as we talked about last week with Tomas, using AI the right way. So maybe it's 50% inbound or marketing driven, and 30% outbound, and 20% AE single sourced or self sourced. But fundamentally, I think most of it should come from demand generation investments and activities that leverage, when he's paraphrasing my class in CRO school, which is, it's what AJ said, a great product that's amplified through marketing and marketing is the act of delivering a certain message to a certain group of people at a specific time to cause them to have interest in your thing. And then sales should be the act of turning that interest into money. And I feel like that the most efficient way to generate revenue growth is to have a great product and invest in the ambassador program, in partnerships, in content generation and product marketing, so that you can be differentiated in the marketplace. And I think the least efficient, again, remember, it's 4 times as expensive as it was 5 years ago. The least efficient way is to hire a bunch of account executives and ask them to pound the phones. And, Mark Kosselglow at the Catalyst summit was saying, well, I have them do $200 a day instead of 100. And the answer to that, based on Jeremy Donovan's data, is they're going to need to do 400 to do what you were able to do with 100 a couple years ago. And that's a big challenge for a lot of current VPs of sales and CROs, is that the lessons that they learned are less applicable today than when they learned them 5, 6, 7 years ago, when the world was fundamentally different.
I think what's really interesting is that last part that you said, that so much is changing so quickly. When you think about the next 5 years from now, so for the next few years, interest rates will be higher. So that has a negative impact on conversion rates of pure outbound, right? Because if interest rates are zero, then by the psychological framework of the business world is spend and growth. And so in a market like that, when you're doing outbound, it'll be more efficient than when interest rates are high. So interest rates will be fundamentally higher than they've been for a long time for the next couple of years. Then you've got artificial intelligence. And so I think the conversion rates that Sam is talking about, which is that it's 4 times more expensive, there's a world in which it becomes 6, 7, 8 times more expensive. And so we do need to understand that a demand generation engine is multifaceted by nature, and it can't just rely on outbound. And we might be moving in a world where the effectiveness of outbound just slowly disappears. I do like what you said, Sam, about still make AEs do some of it so that they're sharp. I think that's a really good point. But the last thing I would say to this, just to add, because I agree with what you guys generally said, is just this really interesting take. I was talking to a friend of ours, Stephen DeFina. Sam, you know Stephen really well, right?
I do know
Stephen is one
well.
of the best revenue leaders I have ever met. And in the business he was in till recently, outbound was working. It was their most efficient channel. Now what played into it is what they sold and who they sold into, which in the market that we are in was something that customers were looking to hear about. And so it was working really well for them. It was working better than advertising, better than any other channel. He was the one person I spoke to who said, for me, it's really good. And I think the lesson there is each of our businesses are unique businesses. And so you've got to test a number of things out and find what's working for you and double down on that. Like, rather than using these benchmarks in a market that's so tumultuous and and is evolving so quickly, know what the 5, 6, 7, 8 things are that everybody can try them, see what works, double down on that.
I would only add, where I come out on this is deep empathy for your customer. Because what is outbound? What is all of it? It's how do you get somebody's attention in a credible way so that they're likely to believe you? And think about how one can get your attention. And think about the last couple big purchases you've made and what led you to make those purchases. Because I think you're right, Asad. There's no one formula. The formula has to be specific to who you are, who you're trying to attract, what they do every day, and your demonstration that you can find them where they're at and hit them with a message that feels like you understand them.
Yeah, like there was a case study that you guys put out recently with Carabiner Group. Is that how you say it?
Carabiner.
Okay, sure.
In Canada, that's how you say it, so it's still okay.
It's with an OI.
What I found interesting in that is that Cliff wrote about how many messages he would send on a regular basis within Slack, like how active he was in Slack and what a big part, or in the Pavilion Slack, and what a big part of their pipeline came out of that activity. And that is not a traditional channel that when you Google demand gen channels, it doesn't come out Pavilion Slack. But they figured out something that was working for them. They doubled down and worked really well for them. And I think that type of thinking is what one needs to do.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where, like, the sponsorship dollars, see, if all you did was look at it as like sponsorship dollars and you didn't do what Cliff was doing,
Yeah.
you might not get the return. But once you have the sponsor, it's like the same thing almost as Carter. Once you have the brand under top, and then you as the advocate can be out there advocating, but you've made it clear that you got skin in the game and that you're authoritative and credible in the conversation, you can change people's minds.
With that
is another episode of Topline Hotline. Thanks everybody for listening. AJ Bruno, CEO of QuotaPath, angel investor to many, many companies. Asid Zaman, CEO of Sales Talent Agency and a man that's afraid of the cold. And me, Gloomy Gus, Sam Jacobs, the CEO of Pavilion, a tried and true member of the Cancer Zodiac family, emotional, maternal, homebody, moody, and depressive. With that, have a wonderful Thursday. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Topline Hotline.